This is a visual essay about Nick Cave. It looks at his career and especially his embrace of the relationship between music and image in performance, in his lyrics, in his music videos, and in his album covers that cements an idea of a kind of gothic masculinity. I've been following Nick Cave since the late 1970s, and here is a picture of him in Berlin at that time. And you can see that he's surrounded by books, by weird bits of hair, and at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a novel by, I think it's Cyrano de Bergerac, who was a 17th century French novelist. So he established himself as a literary figure. I was very taken by Nick Cave at the time, and as you can see, I'm trying to look like him there, aged 17. And age 17 as well, I bought an EP called the Birthday Party's Bad Seed EP, and on it there was a song called Sonny's Burning. It was very loud, very dysfunctional, very clattery, and the first lyric that kind of hooked me in was "Hands up, who wants to die?" As you can see, as a kind of 17-year-old Somerset goth, this had a great appeal. So what I'm trying to suggest is that his work is useful to look at through the lens of performativity, the idea that you do gender rather than that you are gendered, and that gender is something that we repeat over and over again, and so it becomes naturalised, and that Nick Cave does this in terms of presenting us with a gothic masculinity. The sense of the gothic has come through all of his work. This is an album cover from the early 2000s, and you can see there that Abattoir Blues has this whole idea of kind of death and destruction, but also of beauty. We have the Lyre of Orpheus. It's a reference to Greek tragedy, and you can see blooms of flowers there. And flowers die, they're melancholy, they suggest romance. And so all of these things kind of add up to his persona. This works in his performance as well, where he comes across as the kind of Lothario, the kind of shaman, and it works in his music videos as well. This is a music video for 15 Feet of Pure White Snow, and you can see there that the aesthetic is one of kind of Eastern European, possibly 1970s, 1980s dereliction, and there he is, always in a suit, always in black hair throughout his career. Most recently, he was the subject of a film called 20,000 Days on Earth, which was and wasn't a documentary. It worked to establish how important performance is to him and how important writing is to him. It shows us in this publicity still that he is surrounded again by books, by icons. You can see Marilyn Monroe there. He's looking straight at us. Again, he's in black, he's in a suit. So there's a continuity of aesthetic delivery there, in line with how he started out in the late 1970s. And again, this is a screenshot from Age Said Lyrics about Sonny's Burning. And my idea that he's gothic comes from the idea that French Romanticism, specifically Charles Baudelaire, is something that Nick Cave kind of draws on throughout his career. So here we have Charles Baudelaire's poem Fleurs du Mal, and it's Flowers of Evil. And this is the kind of work that Nick Cave delves into throughout his career. You can see an album cover here from his work with Kylie Minogue, and she's lying down in water. It's a murder ballad, so she ends up dead and she's killed by him. You can see the snake, there's the phallic symbol of the snake there, but she also looks like Ophelia in Shakespeare's Hamlet, drowned. And so he uses poetic references, literary references, Shakespearean references. He uses all of this throughout to establish and re-establish and cement this idea of himself as a kind of gothic hero. And so this is why the idea that Judith Butler had of the fact that you don't do gender, you're not gendered but you do gender, is very useful when we start to kind of work out how artists generate a sense of themselves over a period of time. And again, more lyrics here. Nick Cave has also lent his energies, along with his guitarist and co-writer Warren Ellis, to a number of soundtracks. He did the soundtrack for The Road, for example. But this in particular is a soundtrack that, again, works to cement and suggest him as a kind of an author of darkness, an author of things that are violent, that are inherently tragic. Proposition is an Australian film. It's like a Western, it's an Australian version of a Western, and it involves the tale of three brothers, one of whom is in jail and will be hanged, the other of whom is a slow learner, and the middle brother is given the proposition that he has to kill one of his brothers in order for the other to survive. It's incredibly violent, it's very gory, and the music, the soundtrack for it, works beautifully to evoke this sense of desolation, of tragedy, but it's not overwhelmingly grim. The use of violins particularly and banjos lends itself to this kind of scenario. So throughout his career, and this is the latest album, Push the Sky Away, throughout his career he has worked to cement himself as a star. So a star, in Richard Dyer's view, is someone who is not only exceptional, so someone who's better than the rest of us, but someone who's really ordinary as well, who's like us. And that's a true star. And Push the Sky Away was an album that was recorded for the film 20,000 Days on This Earth. And we see Nick Cave in the studio. We see him eating pizza with his twins. And we see him here, possibly with his wife. The slightly unnerving scenario here is that he's fully clothed and she is naked. But again, this serves to underpin the idea of his persona as a sexual one, as a kind of romantic hero, but he plays with that ironically. The ordinariness of Nick Cave, which Richard Dyer again talks about, is that he is a father, and his one of his sons tragically died last year in an accident. And to see the clip of Nick Cave sitting on a sofa eating pizza with his two children, one of whom now is deceased, is incredibly heart-wrenching. This final still is from the film 20,000 Days on This Earth, and it's a shot of him wearing gold this time, and gold signifies angels, it signifies richness, royalty, it's excessive. And again, the poise and the pose is one that we expect of the star. So throughout his career, Nick Cave has chosen a specific theme to mine. It's a theme of gothic hero that he's supplemented with his extra performance work in film, soundtrack work, in novels, and in film.